Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto. I'm a photographer, and in this video I'm going to rank my full-frame camera systems from worst to best or best to worst in 4 different categories. But before I begin, I'd like to remind you that this is supposed to be a light-hearted comparison, nothing serious. And this is only my opinion, one person's opinion from my point of view. And I do understand that some of you may have a different opinion that does not align with mine, and it's totally fine. And please do share your opinion in the comments down below, whether you agree with me or if you don't agree with me. But especially you fanboys out there, please be polite and remember that this is not a life or death question. One reason to make this video is that I recently bought the Nikon Z6 Mark III and a couple of lenses, and I also made a video about that. And after that I got some messages and private messages and comments from my audience, from you guys, asking what happens to my Sony and Panasonic now. Have I decided to ditch these in favor of the Nikon? And some of my friends face-to-face also asked me the same question. And the answer is absolutely no. Let me now show you what exact full-frame cameras I own at the moment. I own the Nikon Z6 Mark III, and then I own the Panasonic S5 Mark IIX, the video-centric model, and then I own the Sony A7 Mark IV. And all these cameras, all the lenses that I have for these cameras, they are mine. I have bought them with my own hard-earned money. No one is sponsoring this video, and I have no affiliation with any of these brands whatsoever. I'm wearing my Sony hoodie, which was given to me by the awesome guys at Helsinki Finland a couple of 3 months ago. But this doesn't affect my opinion at all, and I'd be happy to wear a Nikon hoodie or a Panasonic hoodie if I only had one. So please, Nikon, Panasonic, if you are watching, please send me a hoodie and I promise I'll wear it in some of my videos. You may want to ask, where is Canon? Well, at the moment I don't own any Canon cameras, but I have nothing against Canon or any camera brand for that matter. I have owned many Canon cameras in the past. I have shot countless assignments on Canon cameras, advertising, editorial, magazine work, corporate work, and all kinds of assignments on Canon cameras in the past. However, the problem with the Canon mirrorless lineup for me is the lack of third-party autofocus full-frame lenses. And until that issue is somehow rectified, I don't think I can buy any Canon full-frame mirrorless camera. Canon lenses are fantastic, but it's a deal breaker for me that there are no third-party full-frame autofocus lenses available right now. And I'm not interested in Canon's APS-C lineup. They are fine cameras, but APS-C just does not interest me that much. Now let me finally start ranking these cameras in 4 different categories. But there's one more thing I want to say before I start, just in case there's someone out there watching this video who doesn't follow my channel. My genre of photography is street and documentary. I don't use long lenses. My longest lens for my full-frame cameras is 75mm, and I don't shoot fast action, wildlife or anything like that. Other than some quick actions, fast actions on the street sometimes, but that's it. Let me start off with the best camera for photography, and the best of all these 3 for photography in my opinion is the Sony A7 Mark IV. The main reasons are the best image quality, 33 megapixels, best dynamic range and best everything compared to these 2. Another reason is the best autofocus, which still in my opinion today is slightly ahead of these 2 cameras, even though this is the oldest camera of the bunch. And the second best camera for photography is the Nikon Z6 Mark III. This camera also has a fantastic image quality. I can only see the difference between this and the Sony if I really pixel peep, but there is a difference if I pixel peep. But the image quality is fantastic, and all that talk about the bad dynamic range and all that, it's nonsense. Don't believe that. This is a fantastic camera for photography. But there's one thing that is a big downside for me. If I use anything else than the native aspect ratio of the sensor, that aspect ratio is baked in also into the raw file. So in post I can't recover the full image area even if I wanted. I made a video about that when I had the Z5. I'll put it up here just in case you haven't seen it. And I fully understand it's not any kind of an issue for everyone, but for me it's a big downside. And that's one of the reasons why this is not the best photo camera of all these three. The autofocus on this camera is super fantastic, but for me the Sony autofocus user interface is more convenient, especially when I'm out there shooting and I need to change the settings quickly. And the third best photo camera is the Lumix S5 Mark II X. This is the video-centric model and this really shines in video. But this is also very super nice for photography, but the two other cameras are just slightly nicer for photography. This camera has one standout feature and it is the IBIS, which is by far the best of all these three. I don't care what the numbers say, how many stops, but in real life this beats these two other cameras hands down when it comes to IBIS or stabilization. It's fantastic. That all being said, I'd be really happy to shoot all my pictures on any of these three cameras. All cameras are really good photo cameras. I said this video is not sponsored by anyone, but I lied. This video is sponsored by me, myself. If you like my videos, please do consider buying me a cup of coffee, link down below if you don't live in Finland, or get the channel membership, link down below, or buy my e-zines, link down below, or just subscribe and like. The next up is the best video camera, and the best video camera is the Panasonic Lumix S5 Mark II X. This camera has all the bells and whistles and features that even a professional video shooter might want. There are so many features that I don't need for my modest YouTube video productions, but the standout features for me are the 6K open gate recording and shutter angles. I also like the fan. This camera will never overheat in any circumstances. And it's confidence inspiring. If I need, for whatever reason, shoot very long video clips, I can just leave the camera running and I can be sure it will not overheat. Also, the excellent IBIS is handy if I need to shoot some handheld footage. The second best video camera is the Nikon Z6 Mark III. This camera has some really powerful video features. It can, for example, shoot full width 5.4K up to 60p, so no crop for slow motion, which is fantastic. This can also shoot raw video on a memory card, but for me it's not important. The raw workflow for video is a little bit cumbersome, and it's nothing like the raw workflow for photography. And on top of that, the best raw video quality, the N-RAW footage, is only compatible with the DaVinci Resolve. So that is out of the question for me because I don't use Resolve for video editing. The biggest downsides for me are that there is no shutter angles and no open gate recording, which is a bit of a mystery to me because I'm sure the hardware could handle even 6K open gate recording, and the shutter angles would be only a minor firmware update. But for some reason Nikon has decided to cripple this camera's video features. I hope we will get at least the shutter angles in a future firmware update. And the third best video camera is the Sony a7 Mark IV. This is the oldest of the three, and you can see that, especially when you look at the video features. The video footage itself, it looks fantastic, the autofocus is fantastic, but this camera does not have shutter angles, no open gate recording, and one really bizarre thing is, even though this camera has separate settings for both photo and video, but the autofocus settings don't follow. So if I go from photo to video, I have to remember to change the autofocus settings if I don't use the same settings for both photo and video, which I usually don't do. All that being said, I'd be super happy to shoot all my videos on any of these cameras. The footage from all these cameras looks fantastic and the features would be enough for my modest YouTube productions. But if I can choose, I will take the Panasonic S5 IIX for my video work. And now let's look at the ergonomics. I think the Sony a7 Mark IV has the best ergonomics. And the main reason for me is that this camera has a total of 4 different command dials. And the one here in the corner has a lock, so if the lock is engaged, I can't accidentally change the settings. And this kind of a setup makes it possible for me to have a dedicated command dial for aperture, shutter speed and ISO, which is super convenient, especially when I'm out there and in the heat of the moment when I have to or need to change the settings. This camera also has the best battery life and the most versatile card slots. There are 2 card slots and both slots can take an SD card, but one of the slots can also take a faster CF Express Type B card, which is nice. The S5 Mark IIX has the second best ergonomics. This one also has 3 command dials, so I can have a dedicated dial for shutter speed, ISO and aperture. Super nice. The difference in this category between this and the Sony is really small. But one of the reasons why I think the Sony is better in this category is this thumb dial on the Lumix. This is very easy to turn unintentionally, and the Nikon Z6 Mark III has the 3rd best ergonomics. The main reason is this one has only 2 command dials. So for the 3rd exposure parameter, I have to use a combination of a button and a dial, which is not optimal, at least not for me. This camera also has 2 different types of memory cards. I can kind of understand why Nikon went this way with the cards. One of the slots take a super fast CF Express card and the other slot takes an SD card. However, this is not very convenient for the user because you need 2 different types of cards and these CF Express cards tend to be quite expensive too. And one other weird thing for me is that the subject recognition is so cumbersome to turn on or off compared to these 2 other cameras. I can't program that on any of the buttons and it always requires more than 1 click, which is not the best solution for me when I'm out there in the middle of a shoot. But this camera has by far the best viewfinder, and also this tiny display on top of the camera is lovely, and I wish the other 2 cameras had a similar display. However, these 2 are not enough to compensate for the downsides that I just mentioned, so this camera has to be in the 3rd place in this category. However, all these cameras feel fantastic in my hands, and I'd be really happy to use any of these cameras when it comes to ergonomics. There is one more important question. What if I could only keep one of these cameras and I had to sell the others? That's a really tough question and I'm not sure if I can give you a straight answer. However, I think the Lumix S5 IIX would be a very strong candidate for that one and only camera. This camera doesn't have any deal breakers or serious downsides for me in either video or photography. It's a really nice camera and it's the cheapest of the 3. Fortunately, I don't have to make that decision right now, right here. In the future, I'm gonna be using all these 3 cameras in my future videos pretty much equally. That's all I have for you this time. I hope you enjoyed this little camera comparison. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you soon in the next video.